What's up, guys? It's Sam from Palo Fishing, and today I'm going to show you around our X3, so stay tuned.
In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.
Alright, so we're leaving out of Port Mansfield right now. I've actually got 8 people on the boat. I've got 5 adults and 3 kids out here, and there's plenty of space. You can see I've got a lot of deck space back in the front, a lot of space out in the front. I've still got everyone sitting back here. The wind is blowing from the south at about 20 miles an hour. So you can already kind of see as you're coming out of Port Mansfield, there's a lot of white caps out there. One thing about this boat though, despite this wind coming out here, especially going at Crossman, we're actually going to the east cut to some of the beaches out over there, is that we're going to stay dry, and we'll try to capture that here on video here. But I mean, we're going 20 miles crosswind, and we're all going to stay dry. So if you don't believe me, watch us right now. We're about to show you how we do this. But yeah, it's another good thing about this boat, man. Like, if you're out here at 20 miles when you see a lot of people driving it, taking it easy, hugging the shoreline. Here, we're just going to cut right across it, and we're going to stay dry. So that's the cool part of this thing. Alright guys, so we're fishing out of a 2016 Shallow Sport X3. I've actually got a Yamaha 250 SHO on there right now. So I think that 2016 or 2017 is the last year they really started coming out with those 250s. Ever since then, they really started putting up the 300s and the 350s. So I'm just going to be showing you what we like about this boat and some things that we would do different if we were to buy another one. Okay. Alright guys, so the first thing you'll see here is a massive boat. This boat is 25 feet, almost 26 feet here. And the big thing about this boat, it has a big deck, open deck in here. So this is good for when you're riding around with kids, riding around with your family, plenty of space here on the boat. In addition to that, all this space is actually utilized. There's a lot of storage. Each of these bins is pretty big. So here we've got our anchor box and some key toys, and some of these other ones we've got tackle and different fishing gear. So definitely a lot of storage on this boat. And if you have a raised console, you see a little bit of storage on these side compartments. And we've got 2 clear storage bins in the back where we have our motors and our hydraulic systems for our power pole system. So definitely deck space on this boat is massive. Plenty of space to take the entire family out. Actually, that's what we're doing out here right now. Alright guys, so one of the questions I get asked a lot about this boat is what kind of electronics do we have on this boat. So on this specific one, we don't really have a lot of stuff. We have a Lowrance HDS 12 carbon. It's a Gen 3 touchscreen, and it's plenty for what we need. I've seen guys with 2 of these, or 2 10-inch Lowrances or Garmins. This one works really well. It has all the markings that we need, and it's actually, I really like this HDS. Radio wise, we're using a Fusion radio, and this is nice. It's actually rigged up to I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got about 6 speakers on this boat, and this thing's pretty loud. I mean, so we've got a little JL amplifier pushing it. We've got a Wet Sounds 8-inch subwoofer tied into this boat, and other than that, the electronics themselves are pretty simple. And I know I see people with a lot of other stuff on there, but this is just the way we have ours rigged out. Alright, so I see a lot of questions asked about a T-top on your Shallow Sport X3. Obviously right now it's summertime and it provides a lot of shade on there. Plus it also gives you plenty of area to actually locate some of your lights on there. So in the front we've got a 36-inch flashlight, high beam light. In the back we've got a spreader light that we use when we're out night fishing or early in the morning. I do got a central light here that lights up most of this center console area as well too. And so this T-top provides a lot of area where you can get out there and rig it up this way. One thing I would kind of change around if I were to get this boat again, or a Shallow Sport X3, I don't think I'd go with the T-top again, although it provides a lot of shade. It does take away some casting area, so we'll show you kind of right now what that looks like. So obviously when you're fishing on this boat, you have a lot of people, you have a lot of area on this front deck where people can fish off here, and you know, and I've got a casting platform. If you're gonna have a T-top, you almost need that casting platform. That extension really gives you that additional area that you need to really spread your guys out. So when we're fishing on this boat, we have one guy up here. I usually have another guy somewhere right here. And you can see right now we're kind of getting too close to that T-top. So these guys, if they coordinate enough, they can get pretty close. I can put a third guy here, but most times it's just two guys here. It's kind of hard to get a third guy here to fish around here. You see that right there? That T-top's kind of in the way. It takes away a lot of area on that boat. And then really we end up with our last guy down here. So that T-top takes away a lot of space out there from casting. So if I were to change this boat, I would definitely consider going with a buggy top and a berm bar in the front, and just try to clear up and give you another some more space there to cast another person, or another person to fish there. I also like, we run out of Port Mansfield and Arroyo City a lot, and having a berm bar, I see a lot of guys running up there on their shallow water boats, and it allows them to sight cast and to find the fish from further away. This boat does sit high, this console does sit high, so having a berm bar up here, you're sitting pretty high and you can see for a while away. So definitely something to consider. You're going to be out doing a lot of offshore fishing or being out in the sun with the family. The T-top will work. If you're going to have this as a pure fishing machine and have 4 or 5 people on your boat, then I would consider getting the buggy with the berm bar. Alright, so we do have 2 power poles on this, 2 8-foot blade power poles, and they work really well. Actually, most of these boats, you'll see them with 2 power poles on there. Really, I think you can get away with 1, and a lot of times I use just 1. And I'll show you kind of one thing that I would do different on this boat here is both of these power poles are tied into a single remote, so when you press down, they both come down, and that's good if you want to lock down and try to stay with the in the wind direction in a certain area or a certain direction. What happens a lot though, this boat is so long, if it's a windy day, those power poles, you're going to see them twist a lot, and so a lot of times I drop them, lift them up, drop them, lift them up, and since they're dropping together, little by that, I'm trying to turn into the wind. Or just follow that natural drift, so I remove the torsion off those off the power poles. So that's the one thing I would do. If you go with the double power poles, have separate remotes on your dash where you can control them individually, and then maybe use your remote, program your remote so that you can put them both down individually. Kind of the workaround that we have for this is our Lowrance actually ties into one of our power poles here. So in this screen here, I can control one of the power poles by itself, as you can see there. So yeah, so definitely it's nice. It's almost, you almost need to be able to control the power poles individually. And kind of what we do here is I put one of the power poles down, let the boat turn to whatever angle, and then at that point engage the second one by hitting the double button out there, and they both go. But I think based on this boat, it's really important to be able to isolate each power pole and control them individually. Alright guys, so we're running this Yamaha 250 SHO. I've put about 150 hours on this boat with this motor on there, and overall I like it. It's nice, but I see a lot of the other shallow sports that are out there running around, and they have 300s, 350s, whether it's the Mercuries, the Evinrudes, or even the Suzukis, and even that Suzuki TRP. The big difference that I see that they can do that I can't do is really that hole shot. Those guys, I've seen them pop out of a little bit, is a 1.5 foot or so. For me to take off under normal circumstances, I'm looking at about 18 inches to 2 feet. I can optimize that a little bit, but for the most part, it's it's a little bit tough to get out of this boat. Now, I've considered putting trim tabs on it to try to help with that, for that takeoff. I just haven't done it. It's not really for the type of fishing I do. We do a lot of wade fishing, so yeah, I see my buddies can get in a lot shallower than I can, but just makes for a longer walk for us. So along that same line, so if I were going to get something, a new shallow sport, I'd be looking at that Suzuki 350. It's got that little TRP on there. It's fast, and it pops right out of the boat. If you're not going to go with that 350, anything less than that, I think you do. And if you're going to be running shallow, you do need some trim tabs. And that's really just to take off. When you're up on a plane, I mean, I've ran across Peyton's Bay, which in some cases can be 10 to 12 inches, or even shallower, depending where you're at. And I kind of stay in the deeper parts of it, and I get scared sometimes, and I just kind of gun it to make sure that I don't get stuck. But I have ran this boat pretty shallow. I've been fortunate enough not to get stuck in those areas. But so if I were to go with this, I'd be looking at that Suzuki 350. Alright guys, one of the things that I really like about this boat is the way that it drifts. So you don't need a drift sock, so this is naturally going to drift perpendicular to the wind. And so a lot of guys, like, you'll see the boats turn, the back or the front will turn depending on the specific boat, and people need a drift sock in order to try to get them to drift in this direction. But this boat naturally, because of the tunnels on it, it's just naturally going to drift perpendicular to the wind. And you do need, I don't carry a drift sock on me because this boat's actually pretty heavy, and so it doesn't drift very fast unless the wind is blowing over 25, 30. That's the only time that I would have thought about using a drift sock. But right now the wind's blowing about 20 miles, and it's a slow drift for us, and we're drifting with the wind, which is really cool, without anything, just like this, just coming out here. And it's a pretty slow drift, again, at 20 miles an hour. It's that on days where there's less wind, obviously you're going to drift a lot slower. But right now we're moving pretty good, and again, we're moving in the direction of the wind without any drift sock. So it's definitely one of the nice things about this boat. The next thing that I really like about this boat is really known. I mean, people talk about it, as a cross, getting it in the bay, getting it in shallow water, and then being able to take it offshore. So I talked a little bit about me being able to get into some shallow water, but I've also ran this boat 40, 50 miles offshore. We've got two 60-gallon tanks here, so 120 gallons total, and I mean that gives us the ability to run offshore a lot. Now, even though I have a huge fuel capacity, typically the boat, when I'm running anywhere between say 3,000 to 5,000 RPM, my fuel economy isn't very great with this 250. Typically I'm seeing about 1.2 to 1.5 miles to the gallons. Sometimes it might even be less, depending on how hard I'm running it. So it really depends. But the fuel economy on this boat isn't very good. It's a big boat. It's heavy. It may be the way we have it weighed down when we're out fishing, but in general, whenever I'm planning for 1 mile to each gallon. So it's kind of what I use as my baseline for knowing how much gas I need for how we're going to run that day. So right now, you can see a little bit of over there. We're out here at the East Coast. You can see the jetties over there. You can see out there. The waves are about, right now, I've heard they're about 5 feet. So we're going to run this boat out to the waves and see how we do out in those deeper, or those bigger waves. Let's check it out. Alright guys, we're here at the jetties. We can see the waves are pretty high right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the jetties and then circle around and come back. And you can see how this boat handles the higher waves. some big waves out here that we were able, obviously we don't have that big beat like that boat does, but we, you know, we could still, these waves right here were about 5 feet high. If I would have plugged the jetties a little bit closer, I could have gone outside. But I really wanted to show you guys kind of what this boat could do out in the waves. Actually, you know what? Let's run out past these jetties here on this other side. There you go, man. We made it out of the jetties here. We're going to turn back in because obviously you can see it's pretty rough out here today, but really we just wanted you to show you kind of what we could do in this boat. Now we're going to turn into the waves, so actually here it's going to get pretty bad here too. And then we're going to hug the jetties as well too. So those of you guys who go offshore, you know that if getting through the jetties is the hardest thing, right? So that's going to be the big, just because of the way the jetties break the water. And if you can get past the jetties, they're the biggest waves you're going to see on that specific day if you're going to be near shore fishing or near offshore. And so we just got out of that. We were going to go out to some of our other spots. There's a spot just down there about 6 miles, and it would probably take us about 30 to 45 minutes at the weather today. There's been days where this has been glass out here where you can have it full throttle. Today's not one of those days. I mean, we're talking about winds in the 20s, just over 20 miles an hour, so not bad. But now we're on our way in, so actually we can go surfing here a little bit. Check this out. You guys see how we handle that deeper water, right? So we saw that we can take this out in the summertime. In July, you have a lot of great days where you can run offshore. I mean, I've taken this boat, I personally taken this boat, you know, got kind of in that 40 to 50 mile range out there, and that's kind of the limits on there with this specific motor and our setup that we have. Obviously, you want to pay attention to the weather. That's a big factor. Any day we go offshore, we're watching that. We did a previous video on what we're looking for in weather, what kind of duration we're looking at the waves and how high they are, and some of the apps that we use for that. But definitely weather's a big factor today. Today would have been rough to go offshore. I saw some of the big boats go out there. We can't do that, not with this crew right now. So, but today that wasn't the point. Today was really to get out here, spend some time with the family, and kind of ride around in the boat a little bit. The next thing I want to show you guys here is pull up to the spot where we were at, is how this boat performs in shallow water. And not so much running over on a plane, but more of how we take off. So I'm going to come up here to where we were at, and I'll show you guys a little bit more about what we do to get out of the water. Alright guys, so earlier I talked about the power poles and the dual power poles and how you want to be able to control them individually. I'm going to show you right now kind of what I was talking about here, what happens when they're set up to the same controller. Coming up in here to the area where we're hanging out at, and once I get into the half, I'm going to set my power poles down. Coming up here, it's still maybe about 3 feet deep here. And I'm kind of where I want to go. Alright, as soon as this boat slows down, let's put both power poles down here. Alright, so let's say right here we wanted to anchor down right here. I put both power poles down. Come over here, you can see. Right now we got a lot of wind, so slowly the boat is so long that the power poles are twisting. You can see what I'm talking talking about there. And so what we like to do is I'll lift them both up. I'll put one of them down. Here you see me putting that one down. And then we're just gonna pivot around that power pole. And then once the back of the boat is facing the wind, we'll put the second power pole down, and that'll anchor us down. So, I mean, going at weird angles or angles either perpendicular to the wind, it's really hard to anchor this boat using the power poles that way. You almost need an anchor up in the front to hold you if you're going to do that. And so here, we've pivoted across it. I'll lift them both up so it straightens out. And then go ahead and put them both down. And that's how we use our power poles here. So again, you really need that ability if you're going to have both power poles to use both of them. The other thing I'll show you here is how this boat does with just one power pole. So the idea of two power poles is good, but I really think you can get away with just having one power pole on this boat. On that anchor, yeah, right now it's a really windy day, but you know it's going to hold us there. So I really think you're fine with that. Alright guys, so earlier I talked about the hole shot on this boat, and for me it's been I need about 1.5 feet really to take off. I'm actually coming up on a bank here, but just kind of show you kind of a technique that I use to kind of get this boat. It's a big heavy boat to get it out. Obviously if you have a bigger engine out there and trim tabs, you're going to be able to do a lot better on there. But for me, what I have, this is what I have to do in order to get out. So in this case, I've got the wind coming out here. It's a southeast wind right here, and I'm going in that direction. And so what I have to do is I basically have to use the wind to push me out. And so what I do is I face the wind, and then I'm going to circle around. As I'm circling, that wind is going to push me and help drive me forward. So I'll show you exactly what we're talking about here. The other thing is you got to have your motor propped down or trimmed all the way down. Depending on how deep you are, your jack plate's going to be set a little bit different here. But again, I normally face that wind, and then I'm going to use the wind to pop me out. And so I'll putt my way until I can find a place where I have enough of an exit to go with the wind. So in this case, I'm going to use the wind to push me up. I'm going to turn into the wind, and the wind is going to push me up, and then I'm going to let the wind continue to push me on the back. So I'm facing into the wind, or sometimes I'll face a little bit turned away from the wind, and then turn into the wind and allow it to push me up. So, and here I have my motor all the way trimmed down. I'm just gonna basically gun it and twist it. So hold on, man. Obviously we were off the east cut here, so it gets pretty deep pretty fast, but the point, regardless of where you're at, you're going to see the same thing out there. So again, it's one thing I've had to do. I know some of the smaller boats you can keep on doing donuts. This boat doesn't do a lot of donuts out there very well. It doesn't handle them. Again, like you have to go into the wind and turn around it and use that wind to push you out. It's the only way that you'll be able to kind of get into get out of shallower waters. It's just been my experience with it. Again, I don't have the trim tabs on there. I can't really control and manipulate that with those things. And just again with this setup with the 250 and the stock prop, this is what I do to get out. I can get in again about 18 inches is kind of where anything less than 18 inches it's a little bit shaky for me. I'm not saying the boat can't do it. I just don't want to do it and put myself in that situation. So I use that as a gauge. It has happened to me where sometimes we'll get it a little bit less than that amount, and we have to drift or putt until we find enough depth so we can get the boat out of there on the plane. Alright guys, so I gave you a rundown of this boat, what we really like about it, what we would change, what we would do different on there. Overall, this is a great boat. I love it. It's the best boat I've ever owned. I've caught a lot of fish off this boat. I love to catch snapper. It's what I prefer to do. And I've caught a lot of snapper, amberjacks, cobias, mahi-mahi on this boat. So overall, it's a great boat. It's a big boat. It's a lot of boat for one person if you're going to be running around you or you and a partner. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 guys out there, definitely a big boat. And just like today, we're out hanging out with the family. We're gonna go into one of the back lagoons here and do a little bit of wade fishing back here. But overall, again, best boat I've ever owned. I do think I will get another one. And again, the other one will have the 350 on there and have a berm bar in the front. And really, that's the only thing I would change on this boat for my take. Obviously, my fuel efficiency is something I struggle with here. But you know, when you have an expensive boat like that, you know, you can't be nickeling and diming about your gas here. It's going to get expensive. It's just everything about owning the boat is expensive. But definitely, again, a great boat to do some fishing on, and we're gonna go do some fishing. We're gonna jump off here in a minute. So thanks again, guys, for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.
In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.